In Revelation chapter 13, and today I want to discuss part 3 of Is the Antichrist in the World Today? In part 1 and part 2 we showed very graphically that the world is now in a changeover. International socialism and communism, which calls itself red, is right now gobbling up the globe at a very rapid pace. And before we get into the main message of part 3, I just want to read one little thing from a booklet by a Dr. McBurney called The Lull Before the Storm. The Lull Before the Storm. And here's what he has to say. The foundation for a communist takeover and a virtual flood of innocent blood is already in position. Thousands of Soviet agents, including native Mexicans trained inside of Russia, have infiltrated every political movement in the country. This is Mexico, our neighbor to the south. Most Mexican teachers are members of the Communist Party. That's school teachers. And Mexico is loaded with more communist intellectuals, agitators, and specialized guerrillas than any other country outside the Soviet Union. Now do you see Lenin's great plan? Number 1, take Central Europe. Number 2, take the masses of Asia, then surround the United States, which they're doing now with Nicaragua, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, and now Mexico and Cuba. Surround the United States, and then it would fall like an overripe grapefruit. Their prophecy is coming to pass. But of course that fits with Bible prophecy if we know what to look for. Now in Revelation chapter 13, I want to read verse 16 and 17 today because I touched a lot on the political base and the military base and so on of the coming world government before in the first 2 parts. But in verse 16 and 17 it says, this is a great false prophet that's going to arise side by side simultaneously with the political dictator. And it says he causes all to receive a mark on his right hand or in their foreheads. So it's going to be the small and the great, the rich and the poor. It doesn't matter who you are, what your status in life is. He is going to cause everybody to receive a mark. And you can look from one end of the Bible to the other. I've done this for the last 5 years. You cannot find a purpose for this mark other than one thing. Here it is, verse 17. That no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So this mark is to be used for one thing, and one thing only, that is for buying and selling. But of course, once you suck everybody into an economic system where there is no way of survival except through that system, then you can begin to manipulate people in other areas. Now, many churches, especially, I want to say this because I want to be fair to all churches, especially the Seventh-day keeping churches, have said the mark of the beast would be forced Sunday worship because of Constantine during the Middle Ages. That can't hold water because you can go out and buy and sell Monday through Friday, and it has nothing to do whatsoever with going to church on the seventh day or the first day of the week. And then I want to be fair also to the Seventh-day churches by saying that those in the first-day churches have always taught, and this has spilled over into the Seventh-day churches too. They've always thought that there would be a 10-nation European combine called the European Economic Community, the Common Market, and those 10 nations would enforce a German mark or a currency, and that this currency would be accepted worldwide, and unless you used it, you couldn't buy or sell. But that's not going to hold water either, and I'm going to show that before we're through here. Now, this end-time revived world government is going to have a 4-pronged base: military, political, religious, and economic. And this is what's going to bring the false Messiah, who is going to be elevated from the ranks of human mortal beings into the ranks of the gods. It's called apotheosis. When you elevate a human mortal and claim that that person is a god. And that's exactly what they say is going to happen in their writings and the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. They're going to elevate this human being, and he will have total dictatorial control over every facet of our life. Now, I've given other sermons which I've shown without any question. J. Edgar Hoover, in his book Masters of Deceit, said that the International Socialist Movement wanted to control every facet of your life. Everything. Even down to the number of children you can have. The number of ounces of meat you can eat in a week. Whether you get an education or not. They want to control everything concerning you. And now this is how they're going to do it. Through economics. They're going to control us. Now, in the Review of the News, December 3rd, 1975. And what I want to do is start back several years and come forward to this moment as of yesterday, Friday, March 7th, 1986, and give you information that current. In the Review of the News, December 3rd, 1975, reported on page 47, this is what it said. Dutch motion for one world. This entire article went through showing that Holland, the country of Holland, little tiny, the Netherlands and Holland, over in Europe, has now called for a one-world government. They've called for a total new economic system in Europe where they would have a supranational government that would rule over all the common market in Europe. And they now have presented this to the entire Common Market Commission for approval. It did receive approval in May of 1978, and they said that they were going to elect 355 members to a federal European Parliament that would have a one government for all of Europe. And this article said, and I want to quote it, I think this is very important we understand this. They said that it would be under a single socialist government. What do we see in every nation on earth rising up? Socialism. Socialism. Socialism is communism. The difference is you legislate socialism into being, and communism you overthrow governments by the violence of arms. They have the same government. They control everything, and you become a slave of the state. Now, the overall voting for this parliament was postponed from May of 1978 until June of 1979, and it did take place. And they said that they would have a socialist communist majority would be inevitable. And that's true. Europe is socialist, but Fabian socialism, the way the United States is. Whether we realize it or not, we have had voted into legislation all 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. We just haven't had a dictatorship imposed yet. And that will be coming. I'll get on into that in a few minutes. Now, socialism is everywhere. On February 20th, 1986, the socialist communists, which now run the country of Mexico, has nationalized all radio and television. They have now shut down all religious broadcasting, and that affects us. This is how I found out about this, because we were on XERF radio, which is just across the Mexican border from Del Rio, Texas. That station has now stopped all religious broadcasting. And so our last program was the 15th of February, or the 15th of March, February, on that station. Now, Europe is planning a brand new money system right now. It's in the stages, and they've been working on it. I want to quote an article from the Fort Lauderdale News of July 25th, 1978. Remember, I'm starting you back here, and I'm going to bring you progressively to yesterday. That's how close I'm going to bring you. Here's what the article said. Its title was European Common Market to Plan Monetary System. And they go on through this entire article showing that they no longer in Europe can trust the American dollar. The dollar has been fluctuating in price up and down, and it has caused instability in the money markets of the world. So now they want to set up their own system that would be totally independent of the American system. And they went on to say the European leaders told their finance ministers to have their plan ready by the end of October. That was 1978. Now, they're dragging their feet. They have not implemented this total plan even of yet, 1986. Now, our own political leaders are very deeply committed to a one-world government. Henry Kissinger is the one who officially brought this policy out into the open in the Nixon and Carter administration. former President Jimmy Carter accepted this new world order. And here's what a newspaper article in the Fort Lauderdale News, June 21st, 1978 said. This is a Mr. James Reston, who wrote the article. He said, Carter is concerned now about organizing what he calls a world structure of peace. You see, our own White House, our own elected officials are a part of this movement for one worldism. And the article goes on and says, which means working with NATO, that's Europe, our NATO allies, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and with Japan to control the trade and monetary chaos in the world. Now, Europe, Japan, and the United States. What does that compromise? The trilateral nations, and the Trilateral Commission was founded by Jimmy Carter, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and David Rockefeller. And now they're trying to put together a global network starting with these countries, Japan, United States, and Europe. He went on to show that Carter's foreign policy promoting a world government is not new at all, but it was brought into the presidency and under the influence of presidents by Henry Kissinger. And he says, as Kissinger became prominent in the Nixon and Carter administration, the one world government concept became an open policy. Open policy. And then he mentions a Washington News report of December 1974 by a Mr. Paul Scott. I quote, whether he fully realizes it or not, President Ford has put his stamp of approval on Secretary of State Henry Kissinger's grand design foreign policy for the establishment of a loosely knitted world government before the end of the 1970s. And it was very loosely knit, but today, you know, anytime you have loosely knit things, you pull the ends of the strings and it begins to tighten up. And today we're having a tightening of the strings. I'll go ahead with a quote. By calling for the development of a global strategy and policy for food and oil within the framework of the United Nations. There we have the United Nations. The President clearly signaled his acceptance of the new international order being sought by Kissinger. So this is real. This is our own government officials. And he went on to show that even though Henry Kissinger is out of office, Henry Kissinger meets daily and weekly and monthly with various presidents and cabinet members to formulate policy for the government of the United States. In the same Fort Lauderdale News, March 20th, 1977, here's what it says. President Carter and former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger conferred for 3.5 hours Friday night on a complete range of foreign policy issues. You see, Henry Kissinger is the one who has implemented for the United States. He is the agent of the one-worlders who has taken over the White House of the United States for the promotion of world government and to see to it that all of our policies fit hand in glove with the United Nations organizations, all of their plans for Europe, United States, Japan, and the rest of the world just to come together in interdependence. Let's face it, presidents rise and fall. They come by the ballot box and they fall by the ballot box. But certain people with a one-world government influence never seem to leave Washington, D.C. Their political power has stayed within Washington, D.C. since the 1930s and 40s when Franklin Delano Roosevelt came into office, the first socialist president of the United States. I believe at this time all of this is the framework being laid in advance for this false Messiah who's going to usurp what he's going to call the kingdom of God on earth. He's going to try to duplicate everything that Jesus Christ would do. So this world government is of necessity. It will have to have a world economic system because economics is your day-to-day eating. It's your jobs. You're earning a living. And this is the most vital function of any government, to see to it that a stable economic system exists within a government. In Daniel chapter 11, verse 38 and 39, it says this about this end-time dictator that's going to come. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, a God whom his fathers knew not. Shall he honor with gold, silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. All of these things have economic value. They're valuable resources of the earth. And then down in verse 39 it says, He shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. So it is going to be an economic base that's going to give him his power. Verse 43 of Daniel 11, He shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things. This means he's going to have control of the oil resources of the world, the steel, the iron production. He's going to have all total dictatorial power over all the resources that creates real wealth. Now, through the United Nations organization right now, any of the third and fourth world countries, or any nation to be exact, that borrows money from the International Monetary Fund must sign a note with the United Nations and the World Bank. When they do that, they assign, in case they cannot repay their debts, they assign all the resources and the economy of that country into the hands of the United Nations. And it is directed by the United Nations. Right now, Mexico is on an austerity program because they can't repay their loans. Now, let's go on. I believe that the final world government is going to have a four-pronged front, which I mentioned. Number one, in Revelation 13, it's going to have a military base. Verse 4 tells about it. And they worship the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? So it's going to have a military front. And the United Nations organization does have a program for the gradual transfer of all military equipment of every nation on earth to the United Nations peacekeeping forces. This is real. Now, verse 7, it talks about the political front. So Revelation 13. I'll just quote parts of it. And power was given him over all nations, or kindreds, tongues, and nations. Total world government. Also in verse 8, it talks about the religious power base that this particular individual will achieve. All that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. This is the dictator, not the religious figure. And this has been a cause of a lot of miscomprehension. They have always thought, and I'll just come right out and say it, that the Pope was going to be the one who will be worshipped. But oh no. There will be a religious figure, but this is talking about the political dictator. He's the one who will be worshipped as God. And you're going to see from verse 11 of Revelation 13 through the end of the chapter, it's the religious figure that points everybody in the world through miracles, deceives the world into worshiping the beast. You see? It's the religious figure that will point us to the beast and say, this is the Messiah. This is Jesus. Only they won't use the name Jesus, see? Well, let's drop on down to verse 16 and 17 now, and let's start showing some factual information. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, this is the economic, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man could buy or sell save he that had the mark, the name of the beast, or the number of the name. So it seems to be a couple of different possibilities how they're going to use this, whether it's the name, the number of the name, or a literal mark. So I think we're going to see now how it's going to be possible for this dictator to control everybody on earth. And it's coming very, very close on the economic scene. Verse 14 of Revelation 13. I'll quote a part of that verse. It says, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast. So here is an image that's going to be made to the beast, the political world dictator that's going to control everything. And in verse 15 it says, he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So here with modern technology, we can actually create an image to the beast. We can do it. Modern technology can really make human, man-made machines, computers, that can literally determine whether you live or die. Because if you want worship in this new world system, the beast is God, and the image that he creates to control all of us, he'll deprive us of food, clothing, shelter. Our total dependence will be upon God and however He sustains us. Now, excuse me. The Associated Press recently reported in Washington, D.C., here's what they said, quote, large-scale invasion of an individual's privacy by government agencies will be possible when electronic transfers replace cash and checks in the near future. This was a government commission reporting this, and they released it on the UPI and AP wire services. They went on to say, the electronic transfers already in limited use and expected to be widespread within a few years will permit a grocery store, for example, to deduct instantaneously the cost of foodstuff from the purchaser's bank account. So instant transfers. And then it says the computer storage of the individual's accumulated purchases would make possible unprecedented feats of surveillance. Big Brother is here. He's here by the use of giant computers. And that's why a year ago, when the tax returns were so slow and people were complaining about getting their tax returns back, it's because our government, the IRS, was receiving new computers, and they were programming everything about you and me and every other American citizen into that. That was number one priority, was to get all information on all citizens into that computer. This year, returns are coming back much faster because they've already completed the job. They have all the information on you and me. But also we need to understand that the banking industry is right now going and heading toward total electronic funds transfer. One bank in Dallas, Texas started using it, and before they opened officially for business, and they liked it so well and ran so smoothly, they've never had cash in the bank. It's total 100% instant transfer of funds. Now, I want to give a quote now from the Graduate School of Banking at the University of Wisconsin. Here's what they say, quote, the financial industry today is involved in the most far-reaching development program in the history of modern banking. Electronic fund services with electronic technology created a new kind of banking to put the future in your hand through use of a plastic debit card and the computerized system that it activates. A debit card instead of cash, instead of coins, instead of currency or checks. He goes on to explain how the system works. It says a plastic card or other transmittal device, remember that, can be used to activate the machinery of the electronic fund transfer network, providing the link between a bank and other financial institutions to its customer. So here's a grocery store connected to a bank, and you've got a debit card. It simply debits your bank account and transfers the money right to the store's account. No cash, no checks, no currency. And they went on to say that information encoded on the card includes customer identification, account numbers, and other data needed to permit deposits or withdrawals at a variety of terminal locations both within and outside the institution. Also, it went on to explain a second part. It says the transaction is completed in seconds, electronically, without the necessity of checks, passbooks, deposit slips. They're going to make it easy for us. And it goes on in the same article put out by the university up in Wisconsin that this is going to finally be a worldwide system, and it will be operated through automated clearinghouses. Now, there's some interesting things I'm going to get to in just a minute as to who is promoting automated clearinghouses. But in the Pittsburgh Press, July 16th of 1978, here's what it said. Then we want to leap to the modern day. They say that the dream of a checkless society, one in which salaries, wages, and bills are paid electronically, will inch closer in September. That was 1978, when the Federal Reserve Board's automated clearinghouses system goes national. We need to stop there. Who controls the Federal Reserve System? How do we know there is a world government coming? How can we link together the Federal Reserve System, who is bringing together this automated clearinghouses, the electronic transfer of funds, and international socialism that is gobbling up every nation on earth militarily? How can we link them together? Let's investigate. International bankers financed the Bolshevik Revolution. This is a simple fact of history. Jacob Schiff and Paul Warburg were immigrants in the 1880s and 90s to the United States. They came here as Rothschild agents from the Bank of London in downtown England. They set up what we call the Federal Reserve System in the United States of America. Paul Warburg was the first president of the Federal Reserve System. He and Jacob Schiff had $20 million, and Lenin's gang of 250 assassins trained in the Lower East Side of New York City. They were sent through Germany in a sealed boxcar to Russia for the revolution with $20 million. Now, this is what's interesting. Paul Warburg, who was the first president of the Federal Reserve System, his brother Max Warburg was the head of the German Secret Service in Germany under the Kaisers. And it was Max Warburg, the brother of Paul Warburg, who signed the papers, and I've seen them with my own eyes, copies of them, which gave permission for the $20 million and 250 men with Lenin and Trotsky to go through Germany in sealed boxcars, and they were escorted to the border of Russia. This is your connection. International bankers who own the Federal Reserve System in America are financing worldwide revolution through communism. And so you see, they're only capturing us economically first, while they're capturing the rest of the world politically first. So it's a two-pronged front, economics and political right now. Now, let's go on just a little further, though. I've already read twice where it does say that no man would be able to buy and sell, Revelation 13:16. But it also mentioned in verse 15 that this image to the beast would be able to speak. And it said that unless someone worshiped the image as well as the beast himself, they wouldn't be able to buy and sell. They would be killed, and this image could cause them to be killed. IBM Corporation, which is a multinational corporation, they do business in 125 countries. They're interested in disallowing all national borders and tariffs from one country to the other, has now invented a talking computer. It's called the IBM System 7 Audio Response System. And according to their manual, General Information Manual, on page 12, it tells about this computer. It tells about how it has a vocabulary of over 1,000 words. And this is just a primitive model. This was back in the 1970s and early 80s, and now it's 1986. And they go on to explain in detail the entire operation. So a man-made machine that can talk is not a way out and far out a possibility of the image of the beast. To be exact, we even have robots today that look just like people. And we have movies on the scene right now where robots are made just like people. You can't even tell the difference until you pull off their plastic skin and you see their internal workings. You see, so this is not a far-fetched possibility. It is a possibility, though. Now, let's go even further than that. The government of the United States is shifting to electronic funds transfers. Here's a Gadsden, Alabama news report, March 9th, 1976. Here's what it said. Big headlines. Electronic check depositing will be extended nationwide. The electronic deposit of Social Security checks into savings and checking accounts will be extended nationwide by the end of the year 1976, a Treasury Department official says. The new deposit system eliminates paper checks entirely. And the article goes on to say, I quote, eventually all regular federal payments will be included in the system, which is part of an overall trend toward electronic banking. Brethren, it's not just a trend. This is a deliberate method being hoisted upon the American people so that they can set up an economic dictatorship over us first. And when there is no way you can buy food for your family and milk for your children and so on, unless you come into the system, the people are going to lay down and play dead. They're going to submit to this system. Now, I want to skip one part. I just want to mention this in passing. Even the Employer's Tax Guide of 1977 showed that if you have an IRA account, they had the number 666 in a box, and then you put another number telling what kind of account it was after it. So these things are real. The number 666 is just popping up everywhere. And there's also a 1982 July edition of Communications of the ACM. And this is talking about electronic transfer of funds. And they go on page 443 of that book, showing that if a grocery store has $2 million in volume of sales a year and up, then they can afford the new scanner systems that we see at all Snook stores here in St. Louis greater area. They went on to project that at the rate they were being installed, out of the 22,705 grocery stores in this country, that by probably February of 1982, they would have about 5,200 stores using scanners. And they have. They projected by 1984 they would have 50% of all grocery stores in the country using scanners, and by 1987 or 88, 100% of grocery stores would be using scanners. Now why? It takes a while for the cost of production to come down so smaller grocery stores can afford to use them. You see, it has to be cost effective for the smaller grocery store. So by the year 1988, at the outside, they say all grocery stores will be using scanners. Now, the barcodes, see, that's what's read by these scanners, these little barcodes that are on all the products. Now, in the November 1970 National Geographic's magazine, it had a picture of a giant computer. A giant computer. And this thing was called Iliad 4. And I want to read what the man who wrote the article about this giant computer had to say. He was a Dr. Jerome B. Wisner. And here's what he said. The computer's potential for good and the danger inherent in its misuse exceed our ability to imagine. Wouldn't that be the worst it could do to become an instrument of tyranny, propelling mankind into a new dark age? Isn't that exactly what is prophesied in the book of Revelation? When this dictator controls us through buying and selling, you can't be a part of the system without it. It will be a dark age because no one will have a say-so in their own life. There will be no freedoms whatsoever. Now this Iliad 4, and this is what's interesting, the caption in National Geographic, that's November of 1970, the little caption under this giant picture of this computer, it says, Iliad 4, when completed, will perform 1 billion, that's B as in boy, billion operations a second, and may rival in capacity all other computers combined. That's interesting, isn't it? Because what if there's one centralized computer in the world, and it had the capability of transacting business once every 4 seconds? If there's 4.5 billion people in the world and it can transmit 1 billion transactions a second, isn't it only logical that everybody on earth could make a transaction every 4.5 seconds, and this computer could keep up with it? Buying and selling with computers. This is incredible. But anyway, Controlled Data Institute of Minneapolis, Minnesota, they unveiled their new supercomputer. It was called the Star 100. And according to the Minneapolis Tribune, September 16, 1976, here's what it says. Controlled Data Star 100 computer can store the names and addresses of every person in the United States, the company says. So you see, all you have to have is one giant computer for each nation. They store all the names and addresses in that computer, and it can be hooked up to a switching center right in their world capital, wherever they may be. And therefore, the whole world then would come under this entire system. They also pointed out that Star 100 could allow for the transfer, a sale in this country of every single individual within 2.5 seconds. 2.5 seconds. Everybody could buy something within that period of time. And nobody buys something every 2.5 seconds. So you can see the immense proportions in which there could be double the population on this earth, and we could still use one computer the size of Iliad 4, and still everybody could buy and sell just using that one computer alone. Now, Controlled Data a big headline came out saying, "Control data supercomputer connected to global network." And here's what it went on to say. That there is now in the works and in operations a network being set up in every nation on earth where geopolitical boundaries allow it for a computer network. Communication News, June of 1977, said this about Bank of America. Then I'm going to bring you up to 1985 and show where Bank of America has gone since then. On page 70 it says, Bank of America adds Asian link to World Telecommunications Network. First worldwide bank system. They said the new link to Asia makes Bank of America the first bank to have a worldwide, centralized, interactive computer system. Now remember in a sermon I gave, Masters of Deceit, where I quoted from J. Edgar Hoover? He said that his studies from 1919 through 1958 had proven that the socialist communists have never once deviated from their plan. They want to have a society where they control everything every individual does. Everything. And they want to centralize everything in one set of government buildings. They want all education centralized. So now we have a cabinet post for education in the United States. It passes the State Board of Education and goes straight to each individual school. This is exactly what they're doing. Now they have a worldwide banking system set up where it's centralized and everything can be done right there from that one central network. I want to give you now some excerpts from a Bank America Corporation publication, May-June of 1985. I've just got a picture from the front page of a little bit of it where it shows that it is now connected internationally on every nation on earth, and it goes arrows back and forth showing how they're already connected. This is called Technology World, a publication that they put out. I'm going to hit just a few high spots. Right in the first of this article, they state, here it is, in simplest terms, the international banking system can be defined as a single repository of accounts and customer data that will be shared by many users. All the communications on every person on earth stored in one central location. What happens when the dictator, the beast, lays hands on that system? He's in total control. Then they went on down to say, its purpose is clear, to integrate bank data for worldwide use. It's clear. They want worldwide use. And it says, as far as geopolitical boundaries will permit. And this is already installed on every continent on earth. One more statement from this particular bulletin they put out. Once the international banking system is in place, a wide range of other services will make Bank of America more competitive in the areas of global funds transfer. So it definitely is designed for global network of instant transfer of funds. And they're laying the groundwork right now. So what happens when socialism takes over America? All the instruments for worldwide transfer of funds is already in place, waiting for them. All they have to do is implement it. Also, in the same publication on page 6 and 7, under an article called Bank Pushes Transfer Standards Worldwide, it talks about the American National Standards Institute. This is how they're going to try to standardize all instant transfer of funds and all monies worldwide. And here's what they say. Organizations that are involved in the U.S. financial services industry, and here they are, I'll list them. Federal Reserve, the Department of Treasury, the National Bureau of Standards, the National Security Agency. And we've already seen that the Federal Reserve is totally controlled by those who are financing international socialism and communism. And so they've already passed in legislation in this country implementing all 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. All we need is a national emergency, and this country will be done in. Now I want to stop here just for a second and retrogress, because we're talking about the economic system now. But now that it's set up and in place, how in the world could they take the United States? This is not fact yet. I'm only going to throw out something for us to all think about. Because I read in starting this whole sermon about how Mexico is totally taken by socialism. How they've now taken over the radio waves. They stopped all religious broadcasting. I've already reported before in the January 1986 Newswatch magazine, also in a newsletter you'll be receiving that was mailed out yesterday, you'll see how communism is total now in Mexico. They just haven't told, the press in America just hasn't told us yet, you see. Now, they have already captured illegal aliens between Del Rio, Texas and El Paso, Texas, carrying nuclear components. Now, what happens? These people had large sums of cash on them, Social Security numbers for United States citizens. They had legal passports for America, and yet they were illegals coming into this country. Where do they get all this money? Where do they get these documents? Where do they get the nuclear devices that were on their persons? They said that they were headed for the Mississippi River Basin. They were going to blow up all bridges at the express time that was pre-planned. When all bridges are blown up, now think about this for a minute, and this is not an impossibility, but it's just something to think about to make us alert as to what's going on, so we can get our lives right with Jesus Christ before this time comes. What happens now? At the precise time, millions of illegal aliens keep flooding across from Mexico. Our government has already rationed gasoline to our patrol, Border Patrol. They can only have 25 gallons of gas a week. That only gets them back and forth to work, and they say so. And they can't even go out to try to hunt down illegal aliens anymore. So they're going to flood across the border. And I talked to one of our ministers, Dick Schuta, in San Diego, and he said they're really having problems up in the Los Angeles area and all up in that area. They come right through San Diego and all the way up into California, and now they're overrunning the populations there. And they're even calling for redistricting of whole cities to allow illegals to now vote. So what are they going to do? They're going to vote for an overthrow of this country is what they're going to do. But now, what happens if these nuclear components are put along the Mississippi River Basin? What if they are blown up at a certain time, all bridges? Where does 90% of all vegetables in the United States that goes to the East Coast come from? The rich valleys of California. The trucking industry would be stopped from the Mississippi Valley west and couldn't get to the large populated areas of New York. Now, what would happen to oil and so on that's being pumped out of the wells in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana? It would effectively stop the flow of it through tankers or through trucking and so on. And so it would only take a matter of 3 days, because that's all the food supplies that grocery stores carry, until people will start literally rioting and going into chaos. Now, what would happen if we suddenly are engaged in a war in Nicaragua or El Salvador, or maybe many of our troops are sent over into the Middle East, and we don't have our own armed forces within our own borders and the National Guard to put down riots for ourselves? Do we realize that the President of the United States has already issued executive orders 10,995 through 11,051, taking over and nationalizing everything from our own property, all food stuff, transportation, ports, airlines, everything, and they can relocate whole populations into new areas. All he has to do is declare a national emergency. Then, what if there is no American troops available because we're fighting little brush wars in other countries? Aren't we a member of the United Nations organization? We are. We've got 17 treaties with that country, and that's why our freedoms are being dissolved to merge us into that world government. What would be a quicker way than to say, okay, since your cities are in riot, they're burning the cities because they don't have food, they're looting the stores, we will send peacekeeping troops, if that's what you request, into your cities. Who do you think the United Nations, which is 100% socialist, communist, is going to send to America? They're going to send, and I've got a map in my basement of every nation on earth, and if there are uprising, once the New World Order comes into being, which peacekeeping troops go into which countries? No American troops will ever be used in our own country. They will be sent elsewhere. Foreign troops will come into America. Angola, which is communist, Bulgaria, which is communist, and China, which is communist. Those are the troops that will be sent to America. What if they were to come in and occupy this country just to put down all rioting and our own president called for emergency action to stop the rioting? Then we would be a gone nation. We would be occupied by communists. And every country where their peacekeeping troops have gone into, they have always ended up overthrowing that country for communism. The Congo and Leopoldville was the #1 prime example. But anyway, that's just a little thought as we go along here. Now also, the Bank of America shows that they are the leaders in what is called authentication and key management in the use of the latest cryptographic techniques. What is cryptomatic techniques or cryptographic techniques? If you don't know, you better go to a dictionary, because a cryptographic, here's what it means, and this is according to Webster's New International Dictionary: writing in secret. I want to hold up some writing in secret, and you tell me if you can read what this says. Here is some writing in secret. They're called universal product codes, where little lines are assigned a meaning. You don't know what any of this means. Not any of it. And yet they do, the banks and those who are assigning these numbers. And this is what they say. They are the ones who are out in the forefront using cryptographic technology, writing in secret. So what's going to happen now when they use this, and the framework of all of these codes is 666. Right here, all you have to do is go and find Polaroid, color camera, color film type 108, and it'll show you sixes on there, and their little lines. And then the framework, all the way to the right, down the center, and all the way to the left, are the identical lines, 666. And it's the exact same lines that are on every grocery product anywhere. And now Bank of America is producing this in foreign countries to make it compatible with the economics of America also. I only want to read one more little passage from this, and this is current, up to date, 1985. This is what they say. The other United States representatives, an expert from the National Bureau of Standards, and I, this is the person who wrote this article, were requested to provide a week-long tutoring session at the Deutsche Bundesbank, the Central Bank of Germany. We spent a week literally locked up in the German bank teaching technicians from the major European countries how key management works. And what is key management? It's the use of these product code lines. So they're teaching the European Economic Community right now how to use the same system we have in America, preparing the world and all trilateral countries to develop this technique for the instant transfer of funds. Also in another article they have, the International Banking Service moves project to San Francisco, speeds development effort. And it says, the very first paragraph, development of World Banking Division's international banking system is progressing rapidly as this put together the many pieces of this complicated technology puzzle. So they're moving very rapidly toward world installation. They went on to show that the Bank of America is now the one who is putting in this multinational delivery system, and they're doing it in Europe right now. They went on to show that Europe, the Middle East, and African divisions are now installed, ready for use. And they say this will create a common set of applications worldwide. They're going to have the exact same lines, the same meaning, no matter what country you go to in the world when you buy a product. They're ready, already in place. And I think that's very important that we understand that. Now I want to go just a little further before we start bringing this to a close today, because they're already using the computer in the state of Israel right now to combine all government agencies into one huge computer network. And it says the worldwide tendency toward computerization is irrevocable. Plain statistics and fact of advantages overrule any consideration of privacy of the individual. And this came out of Israel, the little state of Israel. And they go on to say, and here it is, the government, this is Israel's, 1,000 or so computer terminals will soon be fused into one big family and programmed to talk to each other, screen to screen. Science and Development Minister Gideon Patt stated last week. And so you see, even Israel, the little tiny nation, is getting into all of this. Now, here's an article from the Lancaster, Pennsylvania New Era News, Wednesday, July 24th, 1985, which tells all about the little barcodes, what they mean, how they're going to be used. And every single one of them are encased in their hidden written language of 666. There is no exception. Every barcode, the framework of it is 666. Here's another article. It's called Science 86. And this is the April 1986 magazine, volume 7, number 3. And right in the inside cover where it gives the table of contents, Big Brother goes shopping. And here's a man with barcodes on his forehead. And then when you go over and read the article, this is very interesting. Right at the beginning of the article and right at the end is the only quotes that I'll make. It says, research firms are monitoring shoppers through a spyglass at the checkout counter. The scanner panel that searches each item for the series of black bars known as the Universal Product Code. And from it determines the size, brand, and price of the item. Listen to this now. Some 2,500 shoppers in each of 20 cities where grocery stores are equipped with scanners have volunteered to show a numbered card each time they shop. So you see, they're going to get away from cash. They're testing the debit card right now in 25 cities. This is right now, not 5 years ago, not 5 years up the line. This is right now, 25 cities. Or is it 20 cities? 20 cities, 2,500 shoppers are all testing the debit card in grocery stores. The very end of the article, and this is just a science magazine. It has nothing to do with religion. Skin implants. Skin, right under the skin. Implants that could be read by the wand. Anybody ever been to Sears and J.C. Penney's and they have a little wand and they read these lines and the numbers with them? Okay, that's what they're talking about. Have even been suggested. Maybe Orwell was right. Remember George Orwell's book, 1984? With our own UPC bars implanted. Just how different will we be from the packaged good on the shelves? And that's right. If they put the barcodes in our hands for buying and selling, we're just like a packaged good to them. We're no different whatsoever. There's another article that appeared in the St. Petersburg Times, Monday, July 1st, 1986, talking about the disagreement that's going on by experts over whether people or the public will accept electronic transfer of money. But I'm here to tell you there will be no choice in the matter, because my Bible, and when you turn to a New International Version, you read Revelation 13:16, it says, He forced everyone. We're not going to have a choice in the matter. Either you take it or you're not a part of the system. Now, I want to start bringing this to a close. In the last, I guess my closes are, 20 minutes? Okay. There's two important articles that I want to show you now. One of them is 1984. It's from the First American State Bank, and I've got this entire article. This was published for stockholders, customers, and friends of the First American State Bank, Centralia, Washington, in the first quarter of 1984. So this was a January, February, March 84 publication. They go through here, in the very top line, it says, a new currency in 1986. Are we in 1986? I'm only reporting what others give to me, and the newspapers and things like that. I don't say we're going to have a new currency in 1986, but I'm going to tell you some things through March 7th, 1986 that was reported to me. I mean, this time it was verbally, face to face, not 2 feet separating the person that told me. Now, they go on and show all the reasons the government of the United States is giving for introducing a new currency. They say they're going to try to stop illegal cash flows going in and out of the country. They say it's going to bring drug dealers out of the closet and out into the open, all this cash that they receive. It's going to bring prostitution and all the money from that out into the open. They go on and show that they're going to try to stop the underground economy. People dealing in cash back and forth and not reporting it to the IRS. They go on and show many, many reasons why they want to bring this money out into the open or have new currency. They talk about the underground economy right here in this newsletter. Also, the international cash reporting show that if you take $5,000 out of the country, you have to report it to the IRS. And so they're going to create new money with little metallic bars going through it. So if you carry a suitcase through at the airport, it'll light up because you're carrying metal. It may not be a gun, but it's money, see? And they're going to know the money you're taking wherever you go with it. Now, they said one proposed design for a new currency is to include metallic threads in the currency itself so it can be detected by monitoring gear in airports and other facilities regulating international commerce. Right there. They stated, not me. They also go on and show that they are going to try to stop counterfeiting by putting a new currency out and possibility of having holograms on it, which you can't be counterfeited, and also these metallic threads through it. But then they go on and state that they see no way whatsoever they're going to recall our currency and give us $1 for every one that we turn into them. They said there's no way that they're going to go for less than a 10-to-1 exchange. So that means for every $10 we turn in, we get one back. But they also go on to show that they have to prorate. If we have a house payment of $500, it'll go down to $50. All the debts will be prorated according to the exchange. And they went on in this article to show very clearly that every one of the arguments the federal government is using to issue new money is just a lie. It's a ploy. None of them are true. They want to institute, and this is a bank, a part of the Federal Reserve System that's telling the truth. They say that no, none of these things even hold water. That's not the reason why they're doing it. To be exact, they go on down through here, and they say 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 5. The government tells us things and try to make us think this is what they're doing, when really they're after something else over here. They say an announcement of a 1-to-1 exchange for the purpose of controlling counterfeiting, the underground economy, drugs trafficking, doesn't square up. They understand banking. Now, I do want to read in the last paragraph of this entire article. I think it's dynamite. And he goes on and predicts what he feels is going to happen in the currency exchange. He says an exchange of currency, that is, existing Federal Reserve notes. That's all of the little Federal Reserve notes you have in your pocket. Incidentally, I think what I'm going to do is pull out of my pocket and hold up a couple of Federal Reserve notes for everybody to see. Right here is a modern Federal Reserve note. I'm going to read at the top. It says, "This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private." That's modern day. That's what we've got right now, and that's what the Federal Reserve prints. Now, I want to give you a real money. This is what it says right here on this $50 bill. I carry this everywhere, so when I have a chance to educate people, I can. This is what it says on real money according to the Constitution of the United States. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank. And the Constitution of the United States even gives the number of grams and so on to be in gold and silver in our money. And only paper money can be issued if you can go in and exchange that money and get your gold or silver for it. And so we've been hoodwinked into this country through an illegal Federal Reserve system. They put out Federal Reserve notes. It's not federal, it's private banks. It's not federal at all. It's not a reserve system, it's called fractional banking. It's not a note either, because a note is a promise to pay. And so it's a lie on all three words. You see, we gullible Americans have been taken by the socialist communists. Now, let's read what he's got to say here. The existing Federal Reserve notes exchanged by the monetary authorities for a new and different type of currency will occur at some future date. It will not occur within the next 1.5 to 3 years. So that was from the first part of '84. So they said, no, it won't happen till at least the end of 85. When it does occur, and no predictions of actual timing are being made. See, no predictions of when this currency is going to take place. It will be when the inflationary problem in the United States gets almost unbearable. It'll not be a one-to-one basis, but rather be a it'll be a 10-to-1 exchange. When it occurs, it'll be accomplished in an orderly manner. There'll be an ample time for people to exchange their currency at banks, and notice this, other participating institutions. I want to get to that next. The new currency will have features about it to make it more desirable than the present currency. These may include design, durability, and being backed by gold or silver for a short time. Then they go on to say the announcement of the ratio currency exchange will be accompanied by strict foreign exchange controls. Well, anyway, what I want to talk about now, real briefly, is I'm going to summarize and give what I feel is going to be a new world currency. March 7th, 1986, at 3:45 p.m., I went to the Hazelwood Post Office in Hazelwood, Missouri, suburbs of St. Louis. I went in to make a mailing of a newsletter. And when I went in, I found out I had a question because now they're going to raise rates again, the third time in the last 4 months. And they're trying to put all religions, because this is only on non-profit organizations, they're trying to put us out of business. See, so we can't use the mails. So I questioned what the new price would be and where we fit into this new price structure. So they brought 3 of their officials out to explain it to me. And so all of a sudden, for some reason, I pulled out my Federal Reserve notes. And I said, I get a little righteous indignation once in a while when I see these people are trying to put us religious people out of business by higher prices of mail. And they said, oh, well, that's all right. We're going to get new money, too. They said it'll be blue, red, yellow, and we're going to be exchanging it at post offices. But there won't be any pink money. No pink money. Red, yellow, blue, and then they got busy. And so I had to move on. But I'm going back and I'm going to ask them again when this is going to take place. Now, the final part of my message. This is the final, but I think this is very important to give us an indication how close we are to an economic system that's going to be labeled one world. Now, there is coming a currency call-in, and it's going to have to do with a new international economic order being promoted by the United Nations and the Trilateral Commission. They are going to have what is called an overprint program. First of all, they're going to start issuing new currency. They've already done it in France. They've already done it in England, Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Argentina, England, Japan, the Netherlands, and West Germany, and Nigeria. Every one of these bills have one thing in common. Every one of them. They all have, when you're looking at the bill, to the left, they have a completely blank space. There is nothing there whatsoever. This is the only thing that all of these various currencies have in common. Now, what are they going to do with this particular currency? These blank spaces. Our own government has already proposed this new rainbow money with metallic threads running through it. There also was an article in a Washington newspaper which stated why they thought they would come out with this new money, and it said they would not. Now, this is their article, not me. This is not a prediction I'm making. I'm just repeating what that article said. They said that our name, United States of America, would not even appear on our currency. It said it would be in tiny, tiny letters that unless you got a big microscope and looked, you couldn't even see it. It would be a blank spot at the top of the picture of whatever president was on there. A blank spot. Now, why would we have a blank spot there, and all these other currencies have blank spots also? Unless, after they issue new money, then after a period of time, they will declare a world currency
And when we go in to do business at a bank, we can go in and they will overprint the world value in the blank space. And we'll have a currency for a short period of time. And then after the currency, then here's what's going to happen. If I can find all my notes here. All right, here's what I believe is going to happen. First of all, a new national currency, which I've now just talked about, with the blank space where they can overprint, will have to be issued. It'll have to be, because all these other trilateral countries have already done it, and they're ready for the overprint of a world currency. And it'll have a space on our new money for this overprint. Later on, overprinting of all bills will be the new monetary unit for the whole world. If we have a $20 bill and whatever that will become, they'll print right on there, whatever the new currency is. It'll be good in America, Mexico, England, Europe, no matter where you go, that currency is good, and no matter what country you go to, because it's got the overprint of that world value on it. Now, this stamping process is not a reprinting of money, it's only going to be an overprint. So we'll keep the same bills that we have once our new currency comes out. When we go to a bank, they'll just stamp the new imprint on it. That's all. Now, secondly, they're going to issue a new world currency. It'll be completely different in design. This is after we've used our overprinted money for a while. And then, this is to eliminate any possibility of panic. Then they're going to have a universal currency. It'll have metal strips, and probably it'll have barcodes on it to start with, to psychologically put in our mind the use of barcodes. Then the smart card, which is now being tested in the United States and France. This is just like a regular credit card that you go and use, only it's got a computer chip that will hold up to 180 accounts that you may have. And it'll instantaneously keep them up to date on any withdrawal you have from your bank account. This will then replace all currency and get people used to using a card. And it will have the barcode on it. Now, I want to summarize the very last thing, and then I want to read two scriptures as we stop for today. In 1972, a Mr. Robert A. Henderson wrote a book called The Cashless Society. He outlined a plan. And this plan showed that there would be a world central bank. This man happened to be a socialist. And that this world central bank would issue all money, and it would control through instant transfer of funds. The entire book, this is what it was about. In 1981, the August issue of The Banker, it's a report, and it reported that the explosion of computer-based electronic funds transfer has abolished the ability of national central banks to control their own monetary system. So the whole world is in economic chaos. The Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, which is owned by the governments of the world, they said that this will be, more than likely, the instrument to use as a clearinghouse for world transfer of funds. Also, why did they build a 3-block long, 30 feet high computer in Brussels, Belgium? Why did they do it? Why did they build a gigantic computer complex as a backup system in Luxembourg, Belgium? Why did they build an underground facility in Culpeper, Virginia, and it's to be used exclusively for the electronic transfer of funds? I believe the entire system for this world takeover in economics is now in place. Right now. All they have to do is recall our currency, give us new currency, and then the overprint system, then issue a new world currency, then the debit card, psychologically preparing us to accept it on our right hand or forehead. Last two scriptures. Revelation 13, verse 16 and 17. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand. And they stated in their literature the reason why this mark would have to be in the right hand is when you're standing at the checkout counters, the scanners are over here, and your right hand conveniently passes under it. Isn't that convenient? The Bible was 2,000 years ahead of the grocery stores that are built today. chapter 14 of Revelation, verse 9 and 10, and this is for us in this room, and anyone who ever hears this. The third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast, that's the political dictator, in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. Brethren, you and I, under no circumstances, are to participate in this end-time economic system when it does evolve.